along with 5 or 7 students, was walking down the main road. Now he's going to show his arrogance. Nimai was dressed like a king. The yellow cloth that covered his body made him look just like Krishna. As he chewed betel nut, his face resembled millions of moons. People who saw him inquired, "Is he Cupid?" His forehead was decorated with tilak, and in his hands, he carried some books. His lotus eyes destroyed all sins. As the restless-natured Lord walked along with his students, his arms swung back and forth. By providence, Srivas Pandit was coming from the opposite direction at that time. Upon seeing the Lord, Srivas began to laugh loudly. Nimai offered obeisances to Srivas, who blessed Nimai by saying, "Live a long life." Srivas smiled and inquired, "O best of the arrogant, where are you going? Why do you uselessly waste your time by not worshipping Krishna? Why do you spend day and night simply teaching mundane knowledge? Why do people study? Education is only for understanding devotional service of Lord Krishna. Therefore, don't uselessly waste your time any longer. You've studied enough. Now you should worship Krishna." Nimai smiled and said, "Listen, Pandit, that will certainly be done by your mercy." After speaking in this way, Mahaprabhu smiled and departed for the bank of the Ganges, where he met his students. Sri Sachinandana then sat on the bank of the Ganges with his students surrounding him. I could not describe the beauty of that scene if I had a million mouths. It has no comparison in the 3 worlds. And he goes on, I cannot compare Nimai even to Brahaspati, because Brahaspati is partial to the demigods. The Lord, however, is partial to everyone, and therefore comparison to Brahaspati is unjustified. Nor can I compare Nimai to Cupid, because if Cupid appears in one's heart, the heart becomes agitated. When this Lord appears in one's heart, however, all one's material bondage is destroyed, and his heart becomes pure and happy. Therefore, all these comparisons are improper. But there is one comparison that I can think of. Just as, this is the last line, just as the son of Nanda enjoyed his pastimes, Krishna's pastimes, sitting among the cowherd boys on the bank of the Yamuna, that same Krishna, in the form of a Brahmana, now enjoyed pastimes sitting with those same cowherd boys on the bank of the Ganges. There's a book written by one of the contemporaries of Vrindavan Das Thakur. His name was Kavi Karnapur. Kavi Karnapur wrote several books. One of them is a very beautiful description of Krishna's pastimes. Vrindavan Champu. Vrindavan Champu. Ananda Vrindavan Champu. Ananda Vrindavan Champu. It's just Krishna's pastimes. But another book that he wrote was Gora Gonodesh Dipika. It's a description of all those devotees who are in Krishna's pastimes. Who are they in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes? Those devotees in Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, who are they in Krishna's pastimes? Just like here, Vrindavan Das is saying, these students who are so dear to Lord Chaitanya, in previous pastimes with Krishna, they were cowherd boys, and they were just enjoying being with Krishna by the side of the river Jamuna with their cows. And here it's young boys with their teacher and his books, enjoying swimming in the Ganges and all of their activities. The picture that's being portrayed by Vrindavan Das is the Lord is super excellent in all respects, just as Narayana in Narayan Rishi in Badrikashram teaches, so in a certain way, in a certain mood, to a certain group of students. So Lord Chaitanya was doing like that. Better than Brahaspati, better than this and that. The super excellent enjoying of his pastimes of teaching. And the pastimes of teaching has a significance. The significance is, one of the significances is that later he would be teaching about love for Krishna in the mood of the gopis. And persons who have knowledge, these two often go together, knowledge and detachment, jnana vairagya. Jnana vairagya is like a standard couplet in all Vedic teachings. Cultivation of knowledge for the outcome of detachment. The outcome of attachment is so that one can become attached to Brahman by detachment from matter arising from strong knowledge and detachment. Later, when he became a great devotee, he was criticized by the scholars. You're carrying on like a sentimentalist with ordinary people. Brahmins don't do this. Sannyasis don't do this. You have to be the Jnana Vairagya personality and study Vedanta Sutra. But he had already demonstrated. Tomorrow midday, we're going to hear about his defeating Digvijay Pandit. It's a very nice story. He showed even as a young man how qualified he was. Super scholar. He defeated the best of scholars in the land. So he wasn't lacking. He wasn't a sentimentalist, lacking in intellectual prowess. It was beyond that. He had that, and his bhakti was beyond that. Wasn't due to weakness. Because some people criticize. Bhakti is for people who are weak-minded. They're sentimentalists, so they do the bhakti thing. So he's demonstrating, like, thoroughly, that's not the case. He was a super scholar. There's, on and on and on and on, describing how he would debate with people. When he would challenge people to debate, he would make a statement and ask them to defeat it. They couldn't defeat it. Then he would defeat it. And then make another statement and ask them to defeat the other statement. They couldn't defeat it. He would defeat it and then go back and reestablish the first statement. And back and forth, and they just it was demonstrating that argument and logic is inconclusive. But he was the best at it. He was the best at everything because he's the personality of Godhead. But it's inconclusive. Even you're good at it. So if it's inconclusive, then what's conclusive? Not until later did he come to the bhakti platform, just by his lila, and by contact with his spiritual master and the teachings. His spiritual master, Ishwara Puri, also had written a book about Krishna's pastimes. And he was asking Nimai to critique it, or he was expert at grammar, to see if there were any grammar mistakes. That's another nice lila. So I think I better end. Because go on for quite some time. There's reading from Chaitanya Bhagavata is nice because the style of Vrindavan Das Thakur's writing is just ecstatic. It's totally spontaneous. And Prabhupada chose to translate and render into English Chaitanya Charitamrita because the style is different. It's comprehensive and final in many ways, as far as explaining the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya in context of the teachings of the Goswamis, many references from Rupa Goswami's writings and Sanatana Goswami's writings and Jiva Goswami's writings. It made available to the world a very comprehensive picture of who was Lord Chaitanya and the teachings that he gave to these great personalities and how they confirmed everything that he said. And we're not so familiar with Chaitanya Bhagavat, most devotees. But I didn't read the purports. Bhakti Siddhanta wrote the purports, and they're very, very authoritative and very thorough. But this section, I just read from, there's very little purport. It's just the pastimes. So let's see if there's some discussion. Anyone wants to bring up some points or discuss further? We have a portable microphone.
Okay, now,
there are people remote, so they can hear you.
okay, thank you, Guru Maharaj. It was a really nice lecture. So I just wanted to actually, for the point you brought up about, Caitanya Mahaprabhu went to Kazi and, at the night he protested. He was able to communicate and at least get his, point. So my question is about, we are living in the time where we hear about the chaos which is going around in the world and everywhere. And, we're not able to go, and it's not something Prabhuji, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did, went there and we can communicate, but how can we make a difference for all what's going around? And sometimes we feel that we can do bhakti and chanting, but when we see something, and now we are living in a world where before you said that, we had no technology, but now it's different. We hear things and we feel the pain for others. And how can we help? Because sometimes the bhakti may not be enough, to convey that message or to help others.
You're making reference to Chandkazi, and I don't see the connection. I'm trying to understand your question so I can respond.
My question was, at least Mahaprabhu went there.
What was that? It's muffled sound.
Is it better?
It's a little better, but it's still not right. He's got a...
Hello. Is it better?
Well, just keep speaking, and he's got
okay, no problem.
16, 17 dials.
I think it's still muffling, I guess. So maybe I can use my voice?
I can hear better. I don't know about the remote people.
I was trying to think about the point that you brought up. Right? It was a nice thing about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to go there and talk to Pasi about it, and at least bring up, resolve whatever the conflict was going on. What they thought, and we were able to address that. But what I'm trying to say is that we are living right now in a time where we see all the chaos which is going around the world. Right, in different parts of the world, and
so what are we supposed to do?
Right,
that's your question.
Right, in terms of how can we help? Like in terms of chanting is one thing definitely, but I'm trying to understand. Sometimes it's not something we feel for others, right? When we see things, how can we really?
Well, an easy answer for me is Vyasadeva, Srila Vyasadeva. He saw before it happened because he's Trikalagya. And it's not just, things going on around in the world today. And it's the age of Kali. And Vyasadeva looked forward in time and saw the age of Kali symptoms. And it was yikes. So he compiled Srimad Bhagavatam to be responsive. No, he compiled it because he was a literary person. We're not going to be able to compile Srimad Bhagavatam. We're not literary people like that. But we can, same as what the following disciplic succession, propagate the mission of Lord Chaitanya was, given what the age of Kali is all about, and there's details and details, and it gets worse and it gets worse, but that's the formula. It's Vyasadev's formula and Lord Chaitanya's formula for this age of Kali. It's the Srimad Bhagavatam and the chanting of the holy name and the life of bhakti. Now, one can try to make adjustments in other ways or be responsive in other ways, and they're not going to have the same efficacy. They're not going to have the same efficacy. I sent a little 3-minute, 4-minute little something that Indulekha sent to me. Was a little interview of some reporter from India speaking in Hindi to their audience, and then interviewing a Ukrainian fellow about what he was doing. And it turns out he was a Hare Krishna guy. And he said, yes, I've been to India, I went to Mayapur and went to Vrindavan, and I'm 51 years old, and I used to be an athlete, and now I volunteered for the army. And he pulled out of his, bulletproof vest, zipped this and zipped that, and pulled out his beads, and said, in the evening I go home and chant. Now he's doing something, so I forwarded that to, you'd be interested to hear.
We saw that. It's very impressive.
Okay, but let me just tell you what the regional supervisor who works under the GBC for Ukraine, there's 25 temples in the Ukraine and thousands of devotees. 25 temples. I sent it to him. I thought you'd be interested in seeing this. He said, we have taken the position with the government that we're nonviolent. And my guess is he said, don't forward this to others. Because we've taken the position with the government that we're nonviolent, so we don't have to take part in these wars and things like that. He wasn't criticizing the person that was being interviewed, but he doesn't want the word to be spread that, oh, wait a minute, Hare Krishna guys can be part of the military too. So it wasn't just like for protection of the male population. That was not the main reason. When what's the antidote to the madness of Kali Yuga is the question. And the antidote is the spiritual antidote. Now, somebody might say, as you were saying, well, chanting Hare Krishna, that's okay, but what about there's a lot of madness going on, and what's available to us to do something about it? It's, become internally pure and propagate Krishna consciousness. And let's take the matter of violence. Violence is bred by violence. Prabhupada would say many times, so many wars because so many animals are being killed. So people are being killed fast. Violence breeds violence. People lead a violent life, and then comes the violence back to them. So what to do about the violence to animals? We don't just get on the bandwagon of animal rights. We propagate Krishna consciousness. The devotees, here's a practical example. In Australia, they have a really big presence in prasadam distribution. Big. I mean, not just food for life. Big. It's labor-intensive activity is prasadam distribution. They have so many. They popularized vegetarianism to such a degree. I've heard the devotees say the number of cows being raised for slaughter has been reduced by some percentage, a third, because Australia is just large tracts of land. There's the coastal areas, but the interior areas is just, it's cattle farms, but it's greatly reduced. They attribute it to the propagation of vegetarianism, and one of the leading, so that there may be some vegetarian movements or vegan movements, etc., etc. But the devotees take credit, and I believe they're right, by just having faith in propagating Krishna prasadam. Mass scale. It works. Here's another. This is also from Australia. One of my godbrothers sent me, I had no idea that this was going on in the world because we don't hear about something in Wellington. There's some kind of, 25 day protest going on because here it's winter, over there it's summer. So they're out in some place in Wellington protesting something. And the devotees are there feeding everybody and chanting Hare Krishna. And, when they see the devotees, this devotee was being interviewed by, in a live interview, some kind of a news thing, saying, wherever we go, as soon as we come, the Krishnas are coming, now things are going to be peaceful. Just the other day, I just went for a walk, because it was cold, so it got sunny, so I went for a walk. 3 people just, walking around the Dodi. Hare Krishna, you Hare Krishna? So it has, we can't estimate the dynamic of the power of bhakti through the name and then the teachings, but what's missing in the midst, the madness is there because Kali Yuga is advancing, and Kali Yuga is advancing because of godlessness. It's not just get on the bandwagon of thisism or thatism. It's no solution. It's no solution. Prabhupada was adamant, and he was right. People were proposing. Did you happen to read Giriraj Maharaj's book, I'll Build You a Temple, the Juhu story?
Yeah.
Prabhupada was invited to attend it's in that book. He was invited to attend some gathering where he was a panelist, he was a member to make a plan for promoting, well-being and peace and prosperity and stuff like that. And there were so many other people who were speakers, and, Prabhupada was really strong. This, counteracting the perils by something that's good is no solution. It's impermanent because you're still missing the point. The missing point is God consciousness. And in promoting God consciousness, well, come on, promote God consciousness. The argument can be given, but what about the practical stuff? In God consciousness, we don't deny the practical stuff, but the practical stuff stays on the spiritual side of promoting God consciousness. And we have our primary weapons. The holy name, Krishna Prasadam, add the sound vibration of the teachings. And that's the best thing we can do, because it's permanent. And if you want to read explicitly what Prabhupada's comments, Giriraj Maharaj somehow has managed to capture his arguments, and it's really on fire. And not just to his own following, to those people. And they accepted it. I mean, after it took a while, but they honored his words because he was right. You have something?
I have a question. We were talking about this man who is a devotee, and he was in the army, and but I'm just kind of curious. The Gita came out of Mahabharata. Mahabharata was nothing but a violence.
Yeah. And Ramayana too.
So is Ramayana. So what's wrong with that?
What's missing is Dharma. What's the fighting about? What's the fighting about?
Dharma.
No. And in Ramayana and Mahabharata, yes. And the fighting today? What's it about?
If that devotee was taking was in the army, he is doing dharma.
Yeah. No, he's not. Dharma is God-centered. There's no God-centeredness about what's going on.
Maybe we should stop the Russian war monster.
You can go ahead. But the advocacy of using violence is because Krishna wants it. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Arjuna wasn't ready. He was capable, but he wasn't ready when he understood Krishna wants it. So now, does Krishna want?
I know.
Yes. So what the principle is Dharma, not just fighting because you're strong and people. So what's the principle? Now, I don't want to get into a whole politics discussion because it's a hotbed of.
It's not resolvable.
Well, what did Prabhupada want us to do? We take, you wanted Krishna want. What did our founder Acharya want us to do when there are conflicts between one nation and another nation? Awaken Krishna consciousness. That's what he wanted us to do. He would speak to leaders who had the potential of influencing others, but he didn't. He would say sometimes privately, at least, the day may come when we will have to say, accept Krishna consciousness. But when you're fighting for a dharmic principle, it's one thing, and if it just gets a cat and dog fight, it's another thing. Kshatriya spirit has its place. Again, a really nice example is again in Giriraj Maharaj's book. There was a man, Mr. Seti, and he was a Kshatriya. And he used his Kshatriya skill to protect Radha Rasa Bihari. He told the son, get my shotgun and get my revolver. And he was taking shots, not to hit, but to scare the Gundas that were coming to take down the temple. It's like a very exciting thing. And he was fearless. But he didn't use his fighting spirit in other situations. It was to protect Dharma. That's where Kshatriyas have their place. And otherwise, they're nonviolent.
Yeah.
Now, when there's a cat and dog fight, what do you do?
Nothing.
Well, you have to promote Krishna consciousness, because that's what's behind the cat and dog fight. They're behaving like animals because of lack of... So now, how are you going to have big demons become Krishna conscious? You're not. Unless you're Lord Chaitanya. Then what do we do? In general, when the light goes on, persons are less inclined to follow a man that's a dog, or an animal. But it's not just one part of the world. It's all over. It's all over. And it's atheism, without going into what's in the news. Right in this country. And this has traction with some people. Violence to for what? So what's the cause and what's the cure? The lack of God consciousness, and the action we take, vigorously take up becoming pure in heart and give Krishna consciousness to others as widely as possible. I'm sure you've heard Prabhupada's recorded lectures, because you seem to know, you've been around a while. How many hundreds of times did Prabhupada say the verse from Caitanya Bhagavat? Those who have taken their birth in India, Bharata Bhumi Te Manusha Janmajar. You make your life perfect, and give the message of Krishna to everyone. And when the light's on, darkness is dispelled. That's what we do. That's what Vyasadeva did. That's what Lord Chaitanya did. That's what our acharyas did. The Kali Yuga was, each passing generation, it gets darker and darker and darker. Kali Yuga is not going to get brighter. But there are ways to make the light come on stronger, and that's by Krishna consciousness, promotion of Krishna consciousness. She's got to be center stage, or else. Okay, enough on current affairs. Anything else?
I have one question. First of all, thank you so much for this wonderful narration of Caitanya Mahaprabhu's day. The discussion is going around the violence versus non-violence, one practical problem we are facing. So need your guidance on that. So when the other person is about to understand about Krishna or God consciousness, that's fine. What if it is an animal?
What to do when
dealing with that? So mice coming the home, we try to drive them away. The only thing we're saying that we call someone that puts some pesticide, something, kill them, which we don't want. How to face that situation?
Are you asking about pests in the house specifically?
Yeah.
What do you do when you have pests in the house? That's what your question is?
Yeah.
Okay. Two things. First and foremost, clean. Summit cleanliness, summit cleanliness, summit cleanliness, summit cleanliness. Because where they're coming, they want something to eat. You keep the place clean. You keep the place clean, and that's the best deterrent.
It's her birthday today.
She's cute, right? She's a really cute little girl.
Big day for her.
Yeah, she's got a big audience. So here's there was a question asked of Prabhupada in the Manhattan Temple, the Henry Street, the 55th Street Temple. There were cockroaches. What should we do? Cleanliness, cleanliness, cleanliness. We did the cleanliness. they're still there. So he said it 3 times, and then if the cleanliness is observed maximum, then you can get an exterminator. But that's not, what most people do is they just go for the exterminator. But the cleanliness keeps the lower modes of nature creatures away. Prabhupada told a story, I think it was his uncle or something like that. Can't remember. He was a cloth merchant. His uncle? Father? His father. So, to keep the rodents from chewing the cloth, he put a little place where they could get something to eat. And they would go and get that something to eat, and they left the cloth alone. And the amount of money he spent to, there was a cloth merchant, if they started eating the cloth, he would lose a lot of money. But it was protecting his goods, but it's also the kindness. So, I don't recommend that you put a rodent dish out there in your backyard or something. But there may be some way. But it's not just your home; it's what's around, because other homes, and then they're looking because they're finding. That's the lack of Krishna. Lack of cleanliness is a symptom of cleanliness is next to godliness. Lack of cleanliness is lack of godliness. So in your own home, you promote godliness, which next to godliness is cleanliness. Okay. Anything else? Yeah?
Can I ask one more question?
Sure, why not?
You mentioned something about the animal sacrifice, and actually I was also reading the Srimad Bhagavatam chapter 4. And I just completed that part which talks about the animal sacrifice just for Vedic mantra validation.
Yes.
To kill animals.
Yes, exactly.
Vedic mantras. And you made a point about the cow. And I understand it's killing animals is for better for the animals, giving them better life, regenerating. But why didn't they consider that time when they're killing animals? Why not cow to give them a better life? Cow is considered, but
Well, Ashwamedha Yagya and Gomedha Yagya were done. In this age, there's specific reference in this age of Kali. There are 5 things, and those are 2 of the 5 things that are prevented or prohibited in this age of Kali, because they're not Brahmins qualified. So it was there. Okay? I don't know the details.
I'm just trying to say, if it's for better life.
Yeah, but it wasn't just like let's do a nice thing for this old horse or this old cow and give them new life. That's not. Just send them back to Godhead. Engage them in accepting milk from them or whatever service from them, and use that in Krishna service. That's not just do a yajna and give them a new life. That new life is going to also die.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Well, good. Thank you very much, Prabhupada Ki Jai.